to have a roll call. Vote, and I'll get the roll call. When I say your name, if you could just say you're here by a yes, then I'll know you're here. Okay, Representative-elect Adams. Here. Bauer. Here. Borderline.
Here.
Raymond.
Here.
Casper.
Here.
Chase.
Here.
Sini.
Here.
Doyle.
Here.
Ebbin.
Here.
Frickman.
Here.
Gustafson.
Here.
Hanscom.
Here.
Katowski.
Here.
Marley.
Here.
Marquardt. Marshall. Martin.
Here.
Massett.
Here.
McDermott. Melendez.
Here.
Merritt.
Here.
Monahan.
Here.
Oliver.
Here.
Pasqualini. Perry.
Here.
Powers.
Here.
Quinn.
Here.
Richards.
Here.
Stanford.
Here.
Sorry. Irma Streeter.
Here.
Jim Streeter.
Here.
Strode.
Here.
Thompson.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
Wells.
Here.
Whitney.
Here.
And Newsom.
Here.
Okay, there are 34 present. We do have 4 vacancies that we'll be working on that in a minute. Would I have everyone stand and recognize a moment of silence and a salute to the flag? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So if the caucuses that we had at 7:15, if they're candidates that were elected, please join the tables with the other elected members. And I should have had you stand up, continue standing, because I would like to administer the oath of office. So please rise. So you raise your right hands. Do you solemnly swear or attest to uphold the United States Constitution, the State of Connecticut Constitution and statutes, the town charter, and all bylaws of the town RTM that you will adopt to the best of your ability? Congratulations. Now you are true voting members of the 31st Representative Town Meeting. And as voting members, the next item on the agenda is adoption of rules. This resolution is approving the adoptions of the rules and procedures of the 31st, it's temporary adoption of the rules of the 31st RTM, and you're using the 30th rules of adoption. So I need a motion from the floor.
Motion to adopt the rules.
From Monahan.
Six.
From Adams. So motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, raise your hand. I saw somebody fixing their hair. That's not it. Okay, that's unanimous. The next item is an election of moderator. At this time, I can accept any nominations from the floor. Jackie Massett, excuse me, Representative Massett.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I would like to place the name of Scott Newsom.
Second.
And
Frickman? Is that seconded by Frickman?
in light of Representative Newsom's time that he's been here, and in light of the fact that he does have the experience as moderator, that's why I'm nominating him tonight.
Any other nominations? Representative Richards?
I nominate.
I'm sorry. There's a protocol of when you're recognized by the chair, you stand and use a microphone. And when using a microphone, you just hold it at chest level and speak normally.
Madam Clerk, I nominate Syma Ebbins.
Syma Evans. That was seconded? Okay. Okay, so we have 2 names. Any other nominations? So we'll have a motion to close the nominations.
Motion to close the nominations.
Monahan? Powers? Monahan, Powers? All those in favor of closing the nominations, say aye. Aye. Opposed, raise your hand. Abstention, raise your hand. Unanimous. That's 34. Oh, that is not 34. It's 38. Okay. At this point, we'll take the last nomination first, which was Syma Evans.
Actually, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Before we vote, may I have a second to speak?
Oh, certainly.
So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Scott Newsom. I was moderator of the last RTM, and I'm asking for your support to be moderator of this RTM, and here's why. Number one, I run a very good meeting, well-versed in Robert's Rules of Order, and I like to have efficient meetings. And we've come through a lot of things last year. We came through a lot of budget crises, I think, pretty well. I have a lot of experience. I've been in the RTM for about 20 years now. So I've seen a lot of things. And in addition, I'm very conscientious about people's time. If there's nothing on the agenda, I don't believe in meetings just for the sake of meetings. Your time is too important for that. Now, even though my Democrat friends, he crushed us. It was a slaughter. I've never seen anything like it. So you do deserve to have your person up there at the podium. However, I would say you don't necessarily have to. For instance, on the Board of Ed, the Board of Ed the past 2 years was a majority Republican. Kim Watson was nominated. She's a Democrat as chairman because she does a very good job. I, in turn, would do a very good job because the role of the moderator is just to moderate, to make sure the rules of the RTM are followed. I think if you talk to most of my Democratic compadres here, they would say that I'm pretty fair. For instance, Kathy Nugent, who's a Democrat, I had her as chairman of the Education Committee last year. It's a very powerful committee. In some committees, such as Public Works, there were more Democrats than Republicans. In this body, Republican versus Democrat is not, it's not really that big of a deal. We're all working together for the town of Groton. But we have another issue that we're facing, right? There's a group of people that would like to abolish the RTM. They would rather see a smaller group of people, maybe a finance board, replace this body. I think that would be a terrible thing, because in this body we have people who represent all different parts of Groton, all different incomes, the sub-base, you know, Mystic, Groton Long Point, the city versus the town. That's what this body is about, is all of us working together for the betterment of Groton as a whole. And so you don't necessarily have to have a Democrat or a Republican up there at the podium to do that. But hopefully, if you elect me, I promise I will continue to be fair and continue to run things efficiently. And I thank you very much for your support.
Syma. Representative Ebbin, I'm going to get this
Thank
right.
you, Madam Moderator, or Clerk.
There you go.
So I would just like to introduce myself to you guys. I'm also been nominated to run for moderator, and I did serve on the RTM actually with Scott several years ago. I served for about 6 years, I think. But I've also had other experience as a chair. I chaired the Long Island Sound Assembly. I was appointed by Governor Rell, and since 2008 did co-chair that commission that meets down in New Haven. I've also I'm the current president of the American Fisheries Society Socioeconomic Section, and I'm the immediate past chair of the National Network of Research Coordinators for the Sea Grant Program. I've had lots of experience and lots of leadership positions, and I totally agree with Scott. I like efficiency, and if there's no need to meet, let's not meet. So I think we can all agree that fewer meetings is usually better if they're not needed. But as to partisanship, I just want to remind people that the moderator does play the role of appointing people to committees and does play a role in moderating discussion. So to the extent that we have an overwhelming majority as Democrats, I think that there should be a Democratic leader in this body. So I'll just put it at that. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who cares to speak before we go to a vote? Okay, I don't see any other hands. So we'll take Syma Ebbin, since she was the second one nominated. We'll take her first. All those in favor of Representative Syma Ebbin as moderator of the 31st Representative Town Meeting, raise your hand. Okay. Can we see that? Can you see? 24. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Do you have your hand up? Representative Casper, are you voting no?
Well, I thought you vote for one.
Voting for one or the other?
Yeah, one or
Okay,
the other.
okay, thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Confer. How many? 10? 10. That's what I got. So, I know. Any opposed? Okay. 24 in favor, 10 opposed, no abstentions. So be it. I think that I'll ask the body if they care for me to vote on the second nominee. Okay, thank you. So at this point, I ask Moderator Syma Ebbin to come up to the podium, and I will present the gavel to you. It's a customary. It's customary for me to just instruct you.
Okay.
That I'll have this sitting next to us, but I hope that you only use it when you absolutely need it. Congratulations. Thanks.
I think we're going to take a recess while I get the communications. So if you want to take a few minutes. 5. Welcome our 4 new members that have just been sworn in. We have Nancy Mello-Miller from District 7, Michael Whitehouse from District 4, Annie Roger from District 6, and Beverly Washington from my district, District 2. And another note is that our other member, Bruce McDermott, is not able to be here tonight, and notified the city clerk. And then I have another note just to let you know that all these meetings, if you didn't know, are being broadcast live on GMTV Channel 2. Please use a microphone, as Betsy mentioned, so constituents and the public attending the meetings and the audience can hear you at home. All microphones are on, and the volume will be adjusted as you speak. All meetings are available online through the town website and the Groton Municipal Television YouTube channel the next day. If you'd like to be notified of all town meetings, events, and programs posted online, you can subscribe to the Groton Municipal Television YouTube channel by hitting the subscribe button. Subscribing is free, and there's no cost to subscribe. So there you go. And let's see. So our next... What? Yeah, the next item is citizens petitions, and I have two that have signed up. So, Patrice Granatowski. State your name and address just for the record, thanks.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Patrice Granatowski, 30 North Prospect in Groton. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the RTM, for those of you who are new. It's a wonderful experience. I sat in those seats for 20 years. It is excellent. You learn so much about the town, and we appreciate your volunteering to serve on our behalf. You all come from different parts of town, different corners of the town, but when you're here, you all work together for what's best for the whole town of Groton. It's a really important role that you play. I cannot stress enough how important that role is. Later in the year, we'll be coming back to talk to you about maybe coming to some of our town council meetings when we get to the budget session. So we'll let you get your feet wet and get settled in here and get to know the ropes, and then when budget season rolls around, we'll come back with some invitations for you. So good luck to you all, and thank you again for volunteering to serve the town.
And thank you, Mayor Granatowski. I apologize. Our next
Point of
speaker-
order, Madam Moderator. Just to let you know, the Republicans are back now.
Were you caucusing?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know you were caucusing.
alcohol.
No one mentioned that there was a caucus going on. I recessed, but I didn't know there was a caucus. Or,
I'm just letting you know we're back.
okay, thank you. And the next speaker that we have is Michael Kane.
Thank you. My name is Michael Kane. I live at 51 Jupiter Point Road. Earlier this year, a decision was made to combine the planning and zoning commissions. This decision was made with little or no consultation with the planning commission or as to its impact to the town. I've been a member of the planning commission for 15 years. I would like to address some of these issues tonight. I'm here to urge you to keep the planning and zoning commissions separate. Why? What does the planning commission do? When development occurs in town, a plan is presented to planning staff. The planning staff review that application to ensure that the development complies with our regulations. The planning commission's job is to confirm that review and to ensure that that plan, while not being overly burdensome to the developer, does not negatively impact the town. This could include anything from the placement of a trash dumpster to potential traffic issues, sidewalk issues, lighting issues, adverse impacts to wetlands or other sensitive areas, any number of things. The good thing is that the Planning Commission puts a human face on an otherwise bureaucratic process. So when you see that stretch of sidewalk with one missing section finally get completed, that's the Planning Commission. We've been eyeing that stretch of sidewalk for years. Or when a developer asked to save a large flowering cherry tree from being cut down because the regulations say that they need X number of parking spaces, we can offer the developer some relief. That's the Planning Commission, putting the human face on an otherwise bureaucratic process. My feeling is that the more human faces in this process, the better the outcome. Combining the two commissions will eliminate the two more nimble commissions and create one larger commission. The planning process is already mandated by state statute to complete an application in a set period of time. That will not change. What will change are the results. Results that will more negatively impact the town and at the same time not allow for the kind of benefits and understanding of the application and building process that the commission brings to the table. The Planning Commission is made up of people of a variety of backgrounds. I'm a business person and a builder. There are engineers, architects, and even a former town clerk on our commission. What I don't want to see is development for development's sake or development that is half-baked. As a commissioner in the early 2000s, the Planning Commission typically worked until midnight, meeting twice a month. Beyond that, there are site walks, reviewing development plans, and working on various town committees. I've served on the school building committee, the Thames Street development plan, the school redistricting plan, just to name a few. We've had meetings that have gone into the early morning hours. We're volunteers. With Electric Boat proposing to add hundreds, maybe thousands of jobs to our local economy in the near future, we need a process that benefits both the developer and the town. That process already exists, and it works. It worked in the early 2000s, and it will continue to work with two separate commissions. Once again, I urge you to keep the Planning and Zoning Commission separate. Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else who'd like to?
My name's Leanne Obrey. I live at 8 Vista Point Road, Groton, Connecticut. I just wanted to come and thank you very much for the time that you're going to be giving to the RTM. And I'm sure that you're here because you care about Groton. Personally, I think the RTM is the best form of government that there is. If you stand up here and you look this way, you see Groton. Every area of Groton, every economic level of Groton, people that care and people that are going to make good decisions, I think, for Groton. There are some people that don't agree, and I have no problem with the fact that I don't feel the same as they do. Should it come that it comes back for a vote, which one of your members is working very hard to bring it back again for consideration under the charter revision, that's okay. I don't have any problem with it going to the people of Groton, but you are truly the spokesman. You are the people that make things happen. So I think it's very important that you all show up, that you all speak as often as you can, and that you come prepared for the meetings. You know, and don't be like me. I used to forget we were on TV. I'd get home, my family would go, Mom. But anyways, I finally put a little note down that I have now for the other meetings, so I'll remember I'm on TV. But your presentation this year is going to be very, very important, because if it comes back to a vote, you know, this group could be gone. And I think that that would be a great tragedy for Groton. I think we're pretty well run, but this is what Groton is all about. So please, come to the meetings, be prepared, speak on the subjects. Don't let Streeter give you a bad time. So thank you very much for what you're doing, your time, and your dedication. Thank you.
And again, before you go, Counselor Aubry, I'd like to have you and Counselor Parker come up, and I'd like to, give you a certificate of appreciation to let you know how much we appreciate the service that you've given to the RTM over the past several years.
Thank you very much. That's very nice.
I think that there's many others. Unfortunately, I don't think the folks are here, but I'd like to still, note their significant commitment. And in this case, it's Lynn Crockett Hubbard, who served for 26 years on the RTM. Joan Steinford, who has served for 20 years, and she was on when I was on, so that's great. And let me go through the others really quickly, sorry. Nancy Gilly. Joe Barrell, who served for 14 years. Lori Watrous. Ivy Williams. Emily Mayer. Lisa McCabe. Archie Swindell. Robert Bailey. Jim Evans. A lot of them, huh? Jonathan Wilson. Raphael Burgos Jr. Susan Dean Shinbrat. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing anyone's name. Robert Garcia. Bob was on when I was on too. Kathy Nugent. Jean Baker. Frederick Kent. Jim Laughlin. And Jim Nault. And the last is Ducha Slicker Hersong. Thank you, sorry about that. Anyway, so thank you all for, your service. If anyone is here that I just called, please come up and I would love to give you this certificate of appreciation. But I realize that Betsy reminded me that we did not approve the minutes, and so I'd like to just go back and see. You received the minutes from the meeting of October 11th, 2017 in your packet, and I'd like to see if there was a motion to accept them. Representative Massett? All in favor? Oh, there was, next to her. I'm sorry, I can't see the names. These are the minutes from the previous RTM. I was not on that RTM, but I am informed that these are the minutes of our body as it stands now. So we need to accept them so there is a record of that activity that occurred in October. So is there any discussion, amendments, changes noted for those who are there? No? Okay. Hearing no discussion, could there be all in favor of accepting the minutes? Aye. Any opposed? Same sign? No? None? Any abstentions? One abstention. Roseanne. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to move on to the appointment of a temporary Rules and Procedures Committee. And at this time, I'd like to appoint Kate Richards, Doug Monahan, and Scott Newsome, if they would choose to serve as an appointment to the temporary Rules and Procedures Committee. And if you would also like to serve, just contact me offline and I'll see about that. But if that seems to be acceptable to those members. Okay. Hearing no discussion. Let's see. And at this point, we're going to have the report of the town manager.
Good evening. First, the financials. We have a preliminary fund balance as of June 30th, 2017, unaudited, of approximately $10.9 million, which is 9.1% of the FYE 2018 general fund adopted budget. General contingency budget is the current balance is $344,376, and then capital reserve fund balance $1.2 million unaudited as of November 30th, 2017. Going on to my monthly briefing, one thing of note from last night's committee of the whole meeting, I've been directed to, we're going to put out for bid the town attorney services. So if there's any attorneys out there watching who are interested, that our RFP should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. We have a tight timeline of 120 days for the council to take action on who they want from their date of start to when they have to set who their town attorney is. So that should be coming out soon. Odds and ends, over at the Cardinal Honda on Friday and Saturday, there's going to be money collected for Special Olympics Connecticut. The first thing Friday morning from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. is a coin drop. Just drop off any loose change you have. And then beginning at 9 a.m. until Friday till 11 a.m. on Saturday, going all night, is Cop on Top, which officers on top of the Cardinal Honda through the night. So if you come by, and there's going to be food trucks there, I guess, pictures with Santa, penguin plunge, and again, all money you donate will go to the Special Olympics Connecticut. Tomorrow, Mystic Marriott Hotel and Groton Town Police have a toy drive. It's from 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. where you can just drive up and drop off the toy, unwrapped toy, get a complimentary Starbucks coffee, and then the rest of the day you can go up to the front desk and drop your toys off. It's a benefit for the Child and Family Agency of Southeastern Connecticut. And then Groton Human Services, they are providing 500 local families with a holiday meal. They're accepting donations at 2 Fort Hill Road, Mondays through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30, until December 20th. So if you want to donate, please go by there. A couple other notes. If you haven't seen the new economic development website, please check that out. It's really good. It's www.exploremoregroton.com. Fantastic website, going to be a big benefit for promoting development in the area. And then we get a lot of questions on the Mystic Education Center, when that's going to finally go out to bid for proposals to develop that property. The holdup was the state reviewing 3 different times, going back and forth and making different changes, but that should be released Friday, so we'll finally see some activity on that soon. 60-day turnaround time for bids, so February 15th is when the bids will be due. So that's what I have, if there's any questions. Thank you.
Communications from, let's see, Economic Development?
No, it's not.
Oh, what? Superintendent of Schools? Sorry.
I have some. Well, good evening, and I also want to welcome you. I was saying before, one of my last comments last time I came in October was to say just how much I value the RTM and just this whole concept of participatory democracy. I'm delighted that I'll be able to keep coming to these meetings, and I come usually every month and kind of give you a little bit of an update on what's going on in the schools. And so thanks to Doug, let's see if we get these notes around to everyone, because there are some specific figures that I wanted you to know about. The first one is that we received a grant. We applied through the Federal Education Department for a grant to expand magnet schools. And our proposal was to have sufficient money to have Westside become a magnet intra-district, meaning only the children within the town of Groton could go to it, not students from other towns, but to turn Westside into a STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, magnet school, and to have Cutler become an arts and humanities school. And the idea would be that students coming from Northeast Academy Performing Arts School would then be able to go to Cutler, and students coming from Catherine Kolnowski STEAM magnet school would be able to then go to West Side and ultimately to the high school. And we also said that we would want both of those schools, which is really in alignment with the Groton 2020 plan, to become international baccalaureate. All the students would take the middle years program. In fact, all the students in grades 6 through 10 would become international baccalaureate students. The big hurdle to try to do all that was, of course, the money that it was going to take to train the teachers. But I was delighted in late September, we received notification that we were awarded a $4 million grant. So we are, in fact, just this week, we hired the coordinators for those programs. So we're going to be moving forward with those programs and those grants. The big news from West Side, in addition to it becoming a magnet school, is that we had an opening for an assistant principal, and in my career as administrator, I never saw such interest. We had 98 applicants for the job. We had a committee, actually a couple of committees, that interviewed 26 people, and ultimately decided to hire really a fine veteran, a 20-year veteran teacher from Norwich Free Academy. His name is Jamal Davis. Some of you, if you're local football fans, may know he was really a distinguished player at NFA, and went on to a career at University of Connecticut. He's going to be, I think, a really terrific addition. He literally started on Monday, so we're off and running there. The news from Groton 2020 is it is moving along from my perspective at a pretty fast rate. We have been meeting weekly, myself, Miss Austin, and the two middle school principals and our director of buildings and grounds. We've been meeting with the architects, and we're going over the educational specifications, and we're actually answering detailed questions. They've got, of course, a very tight timeline. We hope, we plan. I shouldn't say hope, because any delay, any delay, of course, will cost a fair amount of money. So we plan to open the school in the fall of 2020. It's going to be planned from now through December, and we hope to have shovel in the ground by January, a year from, essentially, year from today. And then open up in 2020, in the fall of 2020. And there is, the real crunch work is actually being done by the Permanent School Building Committee. So they've been meeting twice a month, and mostly town officials, are working hard to get this done. The Board of Education, as some of you may know, there were 3 incumbents who were reelected. One, that's Andrea Ackerman, Lee White, and Rosemary Robertson. One new member, Jane Giulini, and all of them were sworn in thanks to our clerk, Ms. Milkauscher, this week, Monday night. But one of our members resigned because of personal commitments, Gary Baker, and so Mr. Whiteloff was selected by the board, and he also was sworn in. So we actually have 8 out of 9 returning to keep continuity with the board, and then the big news that I've actually known for months, but the program didn't get reauthorized, is the state has a program called the Alliance District. And it's a 5-year program, and it potentially gets reauthorized every 5 years. So last spring, I was notified that Groton had been identified as one of the the alliance districts. To be an alliance district means that the children are performing in the bottom 30 districts in the state of Connecticut. What happened this year was they expanded it to 33 districts, and we were picked up in that. And to be picked up in that means two things. One is that you get some direction, although no mandates, from the state of Connecticut, basically to support early literacy, extended year program, meaning summer enrichment activities, extended day program, after school tutoring and so forth. The financial implications, however, for Groton were enormous, because all alliance districts, and as you see around us in our community, most of the towns lost 5% of their ECS. The alliance districts, they don't lose any of their ECS. And so what happened with Groton last spring, the town anticipated getting $20 million of ECS. Groton had been getting $20 million for about 12 years, $25 million for about 12 years. It was a sort of a program that they basically froze it and they held districts harmless. So Groton had been getting $25 million for a long time, but last spring, as you probably know, the town council in the revenue side of the budget indicated that they anticipated getting $20 million, not $25 million. So the budgets were cut and so forth. But once the budget was approved, and once the alliance district was reauthorized, because it was on a 5-year cycle, then Groton, in fact, gets $25,040,000. So it was an increase of $5 million to the revenue side. So what happened with that is I then got a notification from the State Department of Education that alliance districts have to have the same budget at least the same budget as was appropriated last year. It's sometimes called the minimum budget requirement, or the MBR. So our MBR was the appropriated amount for last year, which is about 1.5 million less than we have now. So what will happen is the town council is going to maybe, I hope, adjust the budget by adding the $1.5 million back. Now, of course, we cut $2.8 million, but if we get $1.5 million back, then that will allow us to put back some of the staff and some of the services, like we cut the site budgets of all the schools. We did not replace reading and math tutors and so forth. So I'm really interested in that. If the problem with the MBR, I don't know if Mayor Grantowski is still here, at least a couple of people are. If a town doesn't meet the minimum budget, what happens is the next year ECS is reduced by 200% of the amount that was underfunded. So let's say that a town has a minimum budget and it fails to meet that minimum by $100,000, say. There would be no penalty this year, but next year the ECS would be deducted, would be reduced by $200,000. So it's a 200% penalty, which I'm hoping that we'll be able to avoid. And so the $5 million, I just confirmed with Town Manager Burt, of the $5 million, the Town Council already took $3.5 million of that and put it in the reserve balance, which will actually help us with our bonding for the new school. And $1.5 million, if that goes to the board, then the budget will go back to what it was. It'd be a 0% increase, but it will go back to what it was last year. So it's a little bit confusing in terms of in terms of the dollar value. And the next time I come, I hope I will be able to explain to you the details of the Alliance program and how Groton was actually identified as an Alliance district. They invited me, the commissioner invited me to a meeting up in the State Department, but that has not yet occurred. So I don't know a whole lot about the details of it other than what I just said about the financial aspects. So that's my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Representative Powers? Oh.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So in other words, Dr. Grenier, what we're saying is by the town council adding back the $1.5 million, we won't be penalized at 200% by the state. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Syma, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So you had said that Cutler will become an arts and humanities magnet, and West Side will become a STEM magnet. So only our students go to those?
Yes.
And then, so if somebody lives in the Cutler district, can they go over to
Yes.
the West Side? Okay.
Yeah.
And then,
Excuse me, they'll be eligible to enter a lottery because we're going to have to balance it.
right, right.
So, yes, everybody will be given a choice.
Okay, great. And then, he asked my question. Thank you.
Representative Katowski?
Hello, Dr. Grenier. I have two questions regarding the Alliance District. The Alliance District is something, we don't want to have this designation, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So once we get used to having all this extra money and our students start performing better and we lose this designation, do we lose all the money yearly? Is that how it works?
Well, you have some embedded assumptions in your question.
Okay.
We don't get any extra money, we just get 0%.
Okay.
So we just go back to zero, which is, which is better than a 2% reduction, which is what we're working on right now. So yes, for the duration of the time, and I don't know, so the second part of your question is, does a district work its way off? And my experience, I can only answer as when I was the superintendent in Putnam, there's another program called Priority District, and we did, actually, after a 2-year program. Really, the theory behind the whole thing is that you have a district, and all of these districts, what I've been saying, especially some of the town councilors that were fighting so hard last spring, and actually through the fall with the governor, is when we were identified last year for a $17 million cut to our ACS, that's to say to go from 25 million to 7.5 million, it was by far the largest cut of any town in the state, which had us as one of the most affluent towns in the state of Connecticut, across the board. And when I met with the governor and met with the legislature, I assured them that that was not true, that there are pockets of real poverty in Groton, and children come from homes with significant poverty. So what you see, I mean, it really is a kind of socioeconomic issue that locally, New London, Norwich, Wyndham, Killingly are on the list. But so is a community like Middletown that has some real pockets of wealth, and Stamford is on the list as well. So I think, yes, I think you can get off the list. We certainly would like to get off the list. The fact that we will have a relatively reliable stream of revenue from the state I think is a good thing, because at least we can plan for it. And we've said all along, the big issue that has yet to come out of the state legislature is a reasonable, transparent formula for determining what state aid is. Well, all of this comes from a Supreme Court case that goes back to the 70s that called Horton versus Meskel, thank you, that all education funding used to be a local property tax issue. And in 78, there was a suit that said it doesn't make any sense because the rich towns have rich schools and the poor towns have poor schools. So they created this fund, which now is about $2 billion. And they said what we should do is we should take this fund and we should distribute it by wealth, by measure of wealth. And the wealthiest towns get nearly nothing, literally, and the poorest towns get a great deal. Groton was sort of in the middle, which I thought was appropriate, but it was a formula that was enacted a long time ago, and it was not recalculated. And so when I saw the calculation last February that the governor's staff made, that instead of getting 25 million, Groton should get 7.5 million, of course I was shocked. So the next thing that's going to happen is there's going to be a real calculation, and at least we will know, and we will be able to plan for that. But in terms of, you know, we got hurt in our wealth calculation because instead of using free and reduced lunch, they use Husky healthcare. And by using Husky healthcare, which is a measure of childhood poverty, it excludes all the military children, because all the military children have health care and they're therefore not eligible for Husky care. So that was that hurt us a fair amount as well. But I think moving forward, I'd really like to come back after my visit to the State Department and give you some more details about the program. I'd like to know myself. I think we would like nothing better than to have our performance increase to the extent that we would no longer be considered.
I have one more question about the minimum budget requirement piece to this. And if you don't know the answer, maybe you can ask them when you go to this meeting.
Yes.
Because we have this alliance designation, does that mean that the normal minimum budget requirement conditions are eliminated, such as if you close a school and you find cost efficiencies, you are allowed to reduce your minimum budget requirement if you have a declining student population? So I'm just wondering if that is included in this?
It is not. Alliance districts, it is irrelevant. It has to be the exact budget from last year. The MBR is the appropriated amount.
Representative Stanford? Is it? Oh, White House, sorry. I'm relying on someone else. And I can't see any, sorry.
Thank you. Dr. Grenier, you mentioned that the two magnet schools will be intra-district, correct?
Intra.
And why are they intra-district instead of general magnet schools?
Yeah, it's a real frustrating point. Because inter-district, that is to say, some of the schools that Learn runs, for example, and all the schools in New London, they are funded a little bit by tuition. We pay about $3,000 per child when a Groton child goes to one of those schools, but the state pays about $9,000. And so 5 years ago, they put in a moratorium on inter-district, no more inter-district. But what we saw for the last several years is that clearly parents in Groton are interested in choice. And so we already had one school, Catherine Kolnowski. We opened Northeast Academy. This year, Catherine Kolnowski, on the lottery list that children were trying to compete for spots in that school, we had 181 children who requested to go to that school and 161 additional children who wanted to go to Northeast Academy. The idea being that they want, children and parents want to go to these themed magnet schools. So we knew school choice was really important. So what we thought is, at least in Groton, if we could give every child in the town and the city the opportunity to go to either of the schools based on the theme, that'd be really a step in the right direction. But it's a financial issue from the state. That's the answer really to your question.
Thank you.
Representative Whitney?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you for your report. I'm encouraged that we're getting money back, or hope through the Alliance District, and that we'll at least hope to meet the minimum budget requirement. But I would say that we anticipated $20 million ECS in the last budget, and now it's up to 25. So I must ask the question, why not 5 million more? I thought the town managers and Board of Education budgets last year were very reasonable and helped to raise us back up, because what I saw last year was that among peer towns in this area, we don't spend as much per student as other areas do. So I think that if we want to get beyond the, eventually grow out of this Alliance District designation, that we should think beyond just the minimum budget requirement. One thing that we noticed with the closing of Pleasant Valley was that class sizes have gone up, and that is often linked to student success and performance. So that's really more of a statement, but my two questions are, what is our ranking in this state right now? I gather it might be between 31 and 33. But as part of the Alliance district designation, it's my understanding we have to have a Alliance performance plan.
Yes.
And has that been developed yet? And if not, when will it be? Thank you.
Well, I hesitate to tell you this part of the answer. The other 30 districts get about $4 million to implement the plan, but the legislature allocated no money at all to Groton. Well, to the 3 districts that were added. So the plan is going to be, well, obviously I have to go to this meeting in Hartford to determine, but I can tell you we already have really a vibrant reading and writing plan that we're implementing. We have a math workshop series that we're implementing. And of course, now these magnet schools, and we're going to be implementing the middle years program for International Baccalaureate. So I think some of those components, coincidentally, will be part of a plan. Last time I spoke to the State Department, some of the officials there were still lobbying that there would be additional funds allocated for the summer enrichment program, for after-school activities. Those are the sorts of things that I'd really love to see. But at this point, we have a plan, with or without the Alliance District. We have a plan, and I really want to see the data, quite frankly, because the students are performing better and better on these SBAC tests at home. So I'm really unclear. I wish I had that answer, but I'll tell you next time.
Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you, Dr. Grenier, for your updates, as always. I have a lot of comments or questions and concerns as a whole. Looking at the grants, we have a $4 million grant that's going to be used towards the magnet school, as it states here. We also have a 2020 plan in place. How is the magnet school going to transfer into our 2020 plan at $4 million? What will that mean when we consolidate? On another piece to that, another question, we said it's interdistrict, and I find it extremely interesting that Westside now will become the STEM magnet school, and that Cutler will become the Arts and Humanities magnet school. Students can apply to attend these different schools. Will transportation be part of that funding so that students can actually be allowed to attend these programs? As far as No questions. The Alliance District. When did we find out as a district that we are actually an Alliance District? You said something in regards to the spring. Here we are in December. I'm just curious as to why it took so long for our district to be notified that we had become an Alliance District. With that being said, I remember standing exactly where you are not that long ago when we were discussing the budget, and I was advocating for our district for funding for our schools. And once again, we have some amazing teachers in this district, but I feel that they're lacking support right down on the ground levels. After attending a lot of the Board of Ed meetings, listening to Westside and Cutler speak about where we're performing, I think it's very clear why we're an Alliance District. If you look it up online, it states that we're underperforming and our test scores are not where they should be. With that being said, looking over the budget, we constantly, consistently keep cutting remedial support in our schools, but yet we're in the direction of funding a STEM and Arts and Humanities program for $4 million. I have some concerns about our direction and hoping that now that we are designated an Alliance District, which I think all the parents were advocating and hoping that we would not become, that we are going to start funding our remedial support. I know that at Westside, we still currently are a Title I school and only have a remedial reading specialist that only attends half the days, so 2 to 3 days a week. And the other half, they're going to the non-Title I school, and there is no math support. I will say that we do have, the positions have been posted currently, but I think I know why we are an Alliance District, and I wonder and I hope that you as a district or as a whole are going to take these considerations. And you also spoke about the becoming, this whole international baccalaureate. I feel that there's some possibility of some concerns why we're an Alliance District. I feel like we're hopping all over. We're becoming a STEM school. We're becoming. Is it too much, perhaps? So those are some of the things I'd like to hear about and have addressed.
Yes, no, yes. How do we integrate the two schools? When the magnet schools, when the two magnet schools come together in the fall of 2020, there will be pathways within the magnet school. We told the federal government this, because it's a magnet school expansion grant, we told them that there would be, in the new middle school, there'll be a pathway for STEM children, and there'll be a pathway, at least one, and one pathway for arts and humanities so that children can come up through those two schools. And there may be a third pathway, or there may be a non-designated pathway, but the pathway will be the way that the programs are integrated. There's about $250,000 a year for transportation for each of those years. And so yes, there will be transportation. We're going to add 4 buses, which will four buses to the fleet. So that'll actually help us at all levels. If we get what we hope, we would love to see our transportation system actually go from 3 bus runs to 2 bus runs, because we would be delivering the children to a campus, and that would allow us to start high school a little bit later. That I know would be good for lots of high school kids. But the answer to your question is, yeah, there's plenty of money for transportation. The reason there was a delay in the notification about the Alliance District is because it was not reauthorized until October. That is to say, it's a 5-year plan that ran its 5-year. It expired on June 30th. So while theoretically we were going to be an Alliance District, until the legislature appropriated the money for the Alliance program, there was no. It was going to just it was going to expire, and there wasn't going to be an Alliance program. The Title I school, Westside, as you know, That is exactly how we're going to use the money if it is reappropriated, to add a literacy specialist and a math tutor and a math specialist. We know when we cut $2.8 million last year that some of those cuts, we obviously didn't want to make any of those cuts, but those West Side, Cutler had reduced services as well, but that's going to be restored. And is it too much? Well, the idea of having magnet schools in this community, I don't think is too much. People are clamoring for choice. We have been able to reverse the tide of kids leaving the district. More and more, especially at the elementary level, children are staying with us. So I don't think the magnets do much. And of course the International Baccalaureate, that was something that was launched 4 years ago. That was always the plan of Groton 2020, that we would have an International Baccalaureate campus at the high school.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other comments for Superintendent Groton?
One of us has to, in this room, get up at 4 to be sure it's not snowing. So I'm going to leave you. Thanks.
Thank you so much for your report. The next item on the agenda is the budget discussions. I just want to remind members when they leave the room to please let the town clerk know so we can mark you as absent if there's a vote or for discussion. If there's no discussion on budget, we can go into other business. Representative Richards?
Madam Moderator, the Democrats would like to caucus.
That's fine. Let's take a 15-minute caucus. Does that seem adequate? And we'll return at 5 after 9. Ordinance on November 8th, 2017. My understanding is we're not really able to discuss it because it hasn't been referred to committee. Representative Whitehouse?
I'd like to make a motion to...
Microphone.
Oh. I would like to make a motion to suspend the rules and create a motion to discuss.
Do I hear a second? Second, Representative Gus Davison. All right, so we have a motion to suspend the rules of the 30th ones we adopted earlier. I guess they're the temporary rules of the 31st. And we need a 2/3 vote to do that. So should we have a roll call vote? Okay.
So when I call your name, please say yes or no.
Point of order.
Yeah.
Monahan from District 6. Do we have discussion about this?
I'm sorry?
Do we have
discuss whether to suspend the rules?
Yes.
Jeez. I can't remember.
Here's my problem. I understand the sentiment. In our caucus, we felt strongly that we didn't have a lot of information about.
It's not debatable. Thank you.
What we're being asked to do.
It's not debatable, Representative Monahan.
Yeah, we have to have the discussion after.
So once it's suspended, then you can discuss it.
Madam, I believe I'm entitled to explain the motion?
That's correct. Sure.
Okay. Sorry, I'm a little rusty with Robert's rules. Haven't used them in about 15 years. In light of the fact that we do not have committees in place, we are not able to send this ordinance to a committee to discuss it. So the only way we can possibly do our duty as the RTM and consider this ordinance, and if it is in the best interest of the town, is to suspend the rules. This would simply be to create a discussion, to create the possibility of vetoing. It would not actually be vetoing. That would be a separate vote, which would require another 2/3. This is simply to be able to discuss it, which is our duty as a deliberative body.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to go into a roll call vote now.
So the roll call vote will be a yes, no, or abstention. Representative Adams? To suspend the rules, yes, no, or okay. Bauer? Borderline?
Yes.
Brayman? Oops, he's left. Casper?
Yes.
Chase? Yes. Sini? Yes. Doyle?
Yes.
Ebbin?
Yes.
Frickman?
No.
Gustafson?
Yes.
Hanscom?
Yes.
Kwiatkowski is left also. Marley has left also. Marquardt? Oh, was never here to begin with. Marshall?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Massett?
Yes.
Melendez?
Yes.
Merritt?
Yes.
Monahan?
Abstain.
Oliver?
Yes.
Pasqualini? Oops, not here. Perry?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Quinn?
No.
Richards?
Yes.
Stanford?
Yes.
Irma Streeter?
Yes.
Jim Streeter?
Yes.
Strode?
Yes.
Thompson has left. Wagner?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Whitney?
Yes.
Newsom?
Yes.
Okay. I have 27 yes, 3 no, and 1 abstention.
I think that passes. Representative Whitehouse?
Oh, I have 4 more, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
They're not on my roll, but they are. Miller? 28. Whitehouse?
Yes.
29. Rogers?
Yes.
30. Washington?
Yes.
31.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I
Representative
do
Washington.
think that motion does pass. So now the floor is open to discuss this, the ordinance of the town council to designate a planning commission, the planning and zoning commission, and to abolish the zoning commission. Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, moderator. Well, where do we begin? Here we are, first day out, and we have a chance to veto something. There's a timestamp on it, so therefore we cannot table this, or else I would be in favor of that. With that being said, I feel that we need to, do our due diligence on this and really have a chance to look at this full document in detail, where it originated from. We had little representation today. We had a generous person that came out and spoke, which was very helpful. But at this time, looking at the dynamics of this, 5 and 5, going down to 7, I have some major concerns. In theory, the concept, I think, is the direction Groton needs to go, but is it the right time? As it stands, we're still waiting for 1 whole year for the zoning paperwork to be complete, if I'm correct on that. What is the rush? What is the urgency? If we are able to veto this and send this back to the council for review and a chance for it to come back to us and with a better set of eyes, more information, more documentation. I also have some questions for the town manager, if that's applicable.
Sure, you can ask the town manager.
Thank you. I was just wondering if you could maybe fill us in on some of your information as to why you feel that this should go through and the information that you may have on this.
Sure. I came in a little bit late into the process. It was kind of getting close to wrapping up when I arrived. I think the points were well taken on the importance of the 2 committees. I guess I come from I moved from Michigan, and you don't have separate committees there. They've always been combined, so that's, first to me, why I lean towards it. They do the same duties, but it's one combined planning commission. anything to me, I think you can put the right people on a combined committee that can still make sure they're balancing all aspects of protecting our community while allowing economic development. And the more you reduce steps and committees that things have to go through for development, the easier the development process, the more economic development you get. But I certainly understand the concerns also. So. And you are correct that it'll take about a year for the, if at least a year, to do the rewrite of the ordinance.
Thank you for your input. Once again, I stand with, I feel we need to look at this further. It would only be fair to the whole RTM body to have more time on this. Thank you.
Representative Massett, and then Newsom. Sorry, Scott.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just as a matter of process, if we take no action, this was passed November 8th by the town council. If we take no action on this tonight, and assuming that committees are in place and that a committee would have a chance to meet, we would be outside of the 45 days, which would make any discussion that we have on this moot.
That's correct. We must act tonight, or it becomes,
it just
passes,
goes through.
There's no chance to change it or weigh in.
Okay,
Exactly.
Thanks.
Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Isn't it possible to call a special meeting if we need to, if we don't make a decision tonight? Madam Clerk?
You could next week. I mean, your deadline is the 24th, which is a Sunday.
Okay. So just for a little bit of background, this process is something that started 3 years ago when the RTM made the decision to fund the Economic Development Commission. This was part of the process. There was a number of things that Director Reiner had laid down that he wanted to do. And in fact, if you go back to the October 11th meeting and pull it up on YouTube, the meeting we had here, and listen to the incredible number of things that we've got just on the cusp of happening here in Groton because of the efforts of Director Reiner over the past 3 years. You'll be amazed. It was a conscious decision by the RTM. You know, we cut a lot of budgets, but economic development was one that we kept intact. This changing of the commissions from 2 down to 1 is part of the process of being more inviting to businesses when they come here. The problem we have in this town, and we've had it for years, a long time, is that people come here and they don't feel like, they're not treated like we want their business in our town. Other towns go to great lengths to make business owners feel welcome. And Director Reiner's been making a lot of changes and a lot of good things, and this is part of it. So instead of waiting for 2 different commissions weeks apart to make a decision, when a business owner may go to Montville and he may have in one night, you know, all of these decisions will be made, and he can be on the path to getting his business built or her business built. I think this is not something that we should veto at all. This has been in the works for quite a while, and it will help the town be on a better footing to receive business. Director Reiner has, like I said, go back and look at the October 11th meeting. He's done some incredible things. Other towns do this. Most towns do not have 2 different committees. They're usually combined. So I would recommend that we not veto this tonight and let it go through so that we can get on with building a better business environment in Groton.
Thank you. Representative Casper, then Representative Quinn.
Thank you, Madam. Excuse me. If all that was true, it'd be fine, but I find it absurd that they come up with a plan to combine the 2 committees and the work that they're doing and never discuss it with either committee members. And I'm confused as to exactly what is going to be streamlined in the process. I don't think that's even been worked out. So I just think it was it's a good idea on paper, but it hasn't, the actual, how it's going to be implemented hasn't been shared. And until we have a plan of exactly how it's going to work, I don't think it's a plan at all. And I think it should go back. We should veto it and it go back to the council, and the details can be worked out. And if you want to know how to do a job, usually you ask the person who's doing the job how to improve it. You don't impose your will, especially when you're not involved in either process. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Quinn, then Representative Merritt.
I'm going to come at this at a different point of view. I'm in the mortgage business. I've done mortgage lending for 30 years, mostly in the town of Groton. My biggest concern every time and I've been on the RTM for 2 years now, is every time this budget increases, it increases the taxpayers' taxability in this town. Whether you're renting or whether you're owning, your tax bill goes up, your housing costs goes up. We cannot put on the backs of our residents the cost of this town. If we would like a better school system, if we would like better roads, it has to come from commercial development. We have been, as a town, very poor in attracting commercial development to our town, to the point where I've talked to developers and they would rather work in New London or Norwich than Groton because of how they're treated. We hired Director Rayner 3 years ago to fix this. If this is his recommendation, we should move forward on it so that we can increase our commercial tax base in this town, so we don't put the burden on our residential residents in this town. He is the only budget we did not cut for the last 2 years. They have been doing extraordinary work to increase our tax base on our commercial development. If this is what he says he needs to do his job, to increase the revenue in this town, we hired him to do this job. We should be respecting his wishes because he has done an excellent job to this point. He can, I think he did a presentation just the last night or two that showed 15 to 20 commercial projects he has going on here. If he could streamline these projects to get them on our tax base, to eliminate the taxes to the residents and to increase business in this town, why are we sitting here saying he doesn't know how he's doing his job and we have a better idea on how he should be doing it? We have no idea what his job is. This is a new RTM. We're very unfamiliar with it. This has been a 3-year project that's been moving forward. We're combining these two boards to help increase revenue. By vetoing this tonight, it will decrease revenue to this town. Thank you.
Thanks. Representative Merritt, then Representative Frickman.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I don't know why these two committees in the past 3 years or before haven't realized there was problems between the two of them and why they didn't sit down with each other and iron out their problems. Why bring it to us to straighten out what they should have?
Representative Frickman, then Representative Marshall.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Sorry. For me, this is an easy decision. Groton's had a problem with bringing business and growth, and for me, this decision is pro-growth. It also means more money for education, more money for all the programs for Parks and Rec, more money for everything we want to do and we don't want to cut. And for me, streamlining and making it more efficient to bring in business and bring in development, it's an easy decision. I don't know. I don't see the argument against it, really. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Marshall.
Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Then White House.
In looking at the legislative history of this item, I see no reference to any of the points that have been brought up recently about economic development. I see a lack of origin of this point beyond a referral or referred from the mayor. And I see a lot of discussion about the two committees. And I'm not against development, but this seems premature to enact a change while there's so much work that has to be done by these individual groups. And I'm interested in learning about the true origin of all this in the right time, right place. Because Groton does need help in this area. That's not in question. That's never in question. That is not the question. The issue is this the right thing to do without the information that we need to do it on? And yes, we are a new RTM, but this doesn't fit right. This doesn't feel right for me, and I can't support it just going through. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Whitehouse, then Wellen? Wells, sorry.
All right, so being new, so I'm new to politics, I'm going to start equivocating right now. So the argument of most, anything that says most towns always makes me nervous because most towns don't have an RTM, which is the argument for why we shouldn't have an RTM. Which I'm not necessarily opposed, I'm just saying anytime I hear most towns this, it makes me really antsy. Because also most towns don't have 40,000 residents in New London County. But I definitely agree about Groton being anti-business. In my job as a publisher, I meet with a lot of different business owners. I met with a builder out in Niantic recently and told him I was from Groton. He was like, oh, Groton. Whew. Groton, yeah, let me tell you some stories. And he told me some stories. So there's definitely is an issue that I've been aware of. But the major concern is we're all arriving here. Some of us seeing this for the first time, not aware of it, which doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but it means that because we're eager to do our jobs and represent the people of Groton, we're nervous about letting something through that we don't know what it is. I do actually have a parliamentary question, which is if the council wanted to reverse this, are they able to? Like hypothetically, next week, if they wanted to reverse this, is that possible?
I would imagine it is, but
I believe they'd have to start the process probably over again, but I'd have to double check that.
But if they wanted to amend it or change it?
They could do that.
They could do that.
And then send it back, of course, yeah.
Right. Because when I first started thinking about vetoing, my concern was this is just going to go through. We don't know what it is. We're here for a reason, to be a check on these things. But as I'm hearing the discussion about it's been a problem, one thing I hadn't thought about is the issue that as a developer, I'm not a developer, so I haven't gone through these problems. The thought of going to a board and then going to another board to do two things that should probably be done by one board, I can definitely see how that could be an issue. And the advantage to vetoing would be it goes back to the town council. But the town council, the new town council has the ability to review and reconsider this without us vetoing it. And I would hope that they have looked into this and are looking into this, right? They're nodding, at least the two are here. I would hope that they're going to be looking into this and considering both sides of the issue. And actually, we are at a unique time politically because we're going from one party's council to another, and the second one is going to have the ability to look at it. And so the more I'm hearing the discussion, this is just my opinion, you can take it for what it's worth for someone who's been on the RTM for about an hour and a half, that I'm inclined to say it does not need to be vetoed because the council is able to reconsider this. It's going to be looked at by both sides of the spectrum at this point. And so I'm comfortable that I at least have done my duty in considering this, but other people may have their own opinions. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Representative Wells, then Bauer.
As I understand the way this is going, the council plans on allowing the zoning commission to complete its major rewrite, which with a deadline of 2019, so it's going to take months at least for them to finish, and that the zoning commission continues to do its work while it rewrites these laws. It's not like everything is on hold until they finish that work. So this is going to take, if everybody was in such a hot hurry to have one-stop shopping, instead of sending the zoning commission packing and calling the planning commission planning and zoning, they should do it the other way around. They can call the zoning commission planning and zoning, and the show would start tomorrow. They could consider the planning. I'm sure the planning people, they could hand them their paperwork. And one of the problems with having, I used to train people and conduct seminars on one aspect of federal regulations, 32 CFR. I practically memorized the significant sections. I conducted seminars in Alabama, not Mississippi, excuse me, Louisiana, Texas, and around the Southwest. And there's an expertise to understanding not only the letter of these zoning protections, but to understand the intent. There's a big gap. There's often a gap, a space between the letter, between what is allowed and what is not allowed. And you need to have an understanding. The people coming with applications don't necessarily have this understanding. And a proper zoning commission can say, if you change this, we can approve it. If you make this adjustment, if you rephrase that, if you do it a different way, that you'll be able to succeed. I think putting this work on on a commission that's busy. Apparently, they have a 45-day deadline to complete the application. You're putting it on them. There's a chance they're going to make mistakes. They're going to say it's not allowed. I've dealt with an architect. He's always like, just when he got all done with a thing, he said, gee, I don't know, you better go apply for zoning, because this may require zoning. And the people who issue the permit, the building department says, you'd better take this to the Historic District Commission, which turned out to be completely unnecessary because we weren't making any changes to anything in the historic district. Part of that is the intent of a historic district is not to make any changes. So if you're not making any changes, you don't have to seek approvals. So I think we're going to lose, if we go forward with this, we're going to lose expertise. Plus, it's pretty rude to say, finish writing this thing, and when you're done, leave the zoning regs by the door. I see the city, Groton Long Point, and Noank have independent zoning commissions. Are they clamoring to have a planning department take over? They've got their regs. Somebody else can read them. Anyway, that's pretty much it. If they're in a hurry, they could simply dump the planning commission and let the zoning folks handle it. It would take them a little longer to rewrite the regs because they'd be busy with other things. But they could have one-stop shopping next month.
Thank you.
Thank
we'll
you,
have
Madam
Representative Bauer and then Monahan.
When you're trying to grow your tax base and the desirability of people to move and live here, you need to make it so that they can do it. It is very upsetting when you're trying to start a business or build a home and you end up going from one commission to the other when some of them can be combined and make it much easier and faster. Doesn't mean that you were going to be slipping in making sure things are done correctly. What it does mean is that people can get things done faster and the way that will make it so they really want to come here. By the time you run into the 5th commission, you pretty well want to go someplace else. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Monahan and then Irma Streeter.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I think when we went to caucus, the consensus of our caucus was we didn't have enough information. This was all pretty new to us. I still feel uncomfortable in voting on this. However, I'm sympathetic to the issue of, and I believe the town council and the other folks who have worked on this acted in good faith and think it's in the best interest of Groton to do this. I don't think this is a Democratic or a Republican issue. I think this is what's in the best interest of Groton issue. I'm concerned that we have a member of the commission, one of the commissions, coming and saying, this is not a good idea. You're not going to like me, but I think we should come back next Wednesday singly to vote on this issue. It will give us a week. We don't need that much time to figure out whether or not it's a good thing to do. I mean, right now, I'm not comfortable. But if I have a week, I'll be able to feel like I have a meaningful vote.
Thank you. Representative Streeter and then Richards. And I see Massett, but you've spoken once. We're going to go through people who haven't spoken yet, okay?
I would just like to clarify the issue about the city. I don't know about Groton Long Point, but in the city we have a combined planning commission and zoning. It's been that way for at least the 12 to 15 years I've been on it. So that was my only point. It runs extremely well. People don't always agree with the decisions.
Please speak into the microphone. No one can hear you.
Does it work well?
Things go smoothly. We meet timelines. When we don't, then there's an agreement between the people who are applying, and it's usually very cordial.
Thank you. We'll hear from Representative Richards.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. We've had a couple options, I guess, to possibly put it up for a vote or wait for a special meeting or do nothing. I was wondering, I think a lot of people's decisions kind of hinges on exactly what the town council, present town council can do. Could the town clerk please clarify that for us?
Okay, with this ordinance has passed the town council and it's sitting with the RTM for an option to veto only. If you were to veto this, there would be no ordinance. The current council could adopt another ordinance, and then it would go through the process of approval, which is public hearing and your veto, 45-day. So there isn't anything they can do with this one. It's all up to this body.
All right.
Did that answer you? No?
But earlier we were saying there was a chance for them to amend or change or rescind. Was that?
No.
No?
No. No. They've already had the ordinance.
I'd like to hear from the town manager now.
It's true, but they could restart the process. For instance, John Reiner mentioned at the meeting last night that if for some reason they have till January 6th of 2019 to finish the work at the Zoning Commission, if for some reason he ran into a timing issue, he asked them, please keep in mind we may have to revisit and change that ordinance again. So they could go through the process of adopting a new ordinance and change it to what they need, right?
A new ordinance.
Right.
All right, so I would like to just put a call out for unique new speakers who haven't spoken yet, and then I will take your second comments if there are no people who have not representatives who have not spoken yet. If not, I will hear from Representative Massett and then Representative Frickman.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I do realize and I do sympathize with everyone who's here and who is new. I have walked in your shoes. I have sat in your seats. However, this is something that will not take effect, if I'm correct, before January of 2019. Given that that is over a year away, I would like to move the question. Now,
there's no motion on the floor.
What?
Is there?
Yeah.
No motion on the floor this time. Sorry.
There's no motion, you're just discussing.
So you can't move the question.
When
Somebody would have to make a motion to veto. Somebody would have to make a motion to veto. There has not been a motion to veto.
So we cannot
move the
vote.
There's no question to move.
If you want to make a motion, we can vote, but someone needs to make a motion first. But we will be here all night. We will hear from Representative Frickman and then Representative Casper if you're done.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you. Just for clarification purposes, Groton Long Point only has one board, not two. And granted, they don't have a lot of economic development in business, but just for clarification.
All right. Representative Casper, and then Wells.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I don't want anyone to think that I'm against merging the two commissions. I am against the method that was picked by the council to merge them. And then really postponing it to January 19th seems of 19 seems a little bit kind of weird. Is that this is important? Why don't we get it done now? Why don't we just merge the two commissions, put them together as is with the you know the numbers that are there, and they can sit in and have the same presentation from developers, and they can do their thing. I mean, the way it's being done, the first thing that was happening was the planning board was talking about all quitting, and that would be a negative if that happened. And when someone from the planning commission says to veto it, you know there's a problem, there's an issue, and that should be addressed. And that, you know, well, we're going to ram it through, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it on January of 19 because it's important we get this done. We streamline the process. This isn't streamlining the process by doing something that's almost, you know, that's more than a year away. It just seems absurd. It's almost laughable. If they have a good plan, they should be able to implement it now. Thank you.
Just to speak to that, originally the former town council had a lot of interest in moving it forward more quickly than waiting a year. John Reiner asked that they delay it for a year to give because the zoning commission, the zoning rewrite is also important, and so they didn't want to have that take longer because we also run into, it's, you know, 30-year-old code, you know, much of it hasn't been touched in that time, so they didn't want to have that be extended out forever. So that's why they kind of tried to find a compromise and put it out a year. So just to explain that.
All right, Representative Wells, and then Mr. Streeter.
I think there seems to be a widely held belief that zoning protections are antithetical to development. But I just wanted to point out one of the issues that I hear that is complaining is that they want to extend the buffer around water supplies from 50 feet to another stone's throw, an additional to 100 feet. And this would be to keep things like car washers, gas stations, things that, you know, potential sources of pollution in the water supply. And the thing that I also heard is that the new brewery in Groton, in the city, one of the reasons they chose the city to put this in is the quality of the water. So I would imagine that there's a commercial development that would be very interested in these protections that the zoning board puts forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Streeter?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. A point of clarification from the town clerk. The introductory paragraph for this ordinance says requires 2/3 vote of the entire membership. And that would be everybody that's on the RTM, not those that are just present. Is that correct?
That's 41 members. That's correct.
So we need 2/3 of 41 members to veto. Thank you.
Well taken. Representative Bordelon.
It's 28 vetoes, or 28 people.
I just want to, thank you, Madam Moderator. Just what Representative Casper had stated, this in no way is, you know, not believing that we need economic development in this town. But I, once again, feel that how fast this was pushed through. The other key piece to all this is the environmental aspect here in Groton. I have major concerns. We have a lot of vacant buildings in Groton on our major throughway here for that should be filled if we're so worried about economic development. Nobody's buying these properties that are already here. So that's one of my other concerns, and our dealings with business folks in this area in regards to real estate. It seems that people have spoke about our relationship. So maybe that's something else we need to think about, is the direction of this, and that is my concern with how fast this is going. It sounds like we need to fill up buildings that have already been established and that are sitting there vacant that we cannot seem to fill, and yet also think of the economic aspect as well as the environmental aspect. I err on the side of caution about building a whole bunch of new, economic properties when we can't seem to sustain the ones we have and bring in enough business that want to actually stay here. So I think we need to really consider that. I do think the merge is important, though. Thank you.
Representative Newsom and then Quinn.
Sorry, guys, but just a couple of things. First, this is not something that's being done on the fly. If you've been around, this has been talked about for about half a year at least. And I'm sorry Director Reiner is not here to answer some of these questions, and the fact is that the zoning, which was another part of the thing that had to be done, the reason we can't sell some of these buildings is we need to do a rewrite of the zoning laws, and that's what's currently taking place. Once the rewrite of the zoning laws is done, then they'll be able to merge the two committees. So there's a plan that's in process. It's just not going, obviously, as fast as we'd like to, but there is a plan.
Representative Quinn.
By merging the two together, we're not getting rid of one or the other. We're just streamlining it for the developers. And it's not for new development, it's for current development. If you looked at Director Reiner's plans, he has shown, and I guess if you go back to some of the meetings we had, plans on what we're doing with the buildings we already have. We're not looking to build new buildings. We're trying to take the ones that are empty and fill them with commercial development. And what we're trying to do is attract these commercial developers to Groton. And one of the ways to attract them is to streamline the process. So if both committees are working together and these developers are getting answers quicker, time is money. We're attracting them quicker. I've seen developers leave this town when it took so long to get an answer on a current building that was vacant because they couldn't get an answer on whether we could build or what their guidelines are or what they had to do it. So what these two offices going together is going to do is streamline it for developers to be attracted to this town so we can get things done in a quicker manner. And it has been ongoing for 3 years. This has been a 3-year process to try to get Groton, since we got off the tax roll with Pfizer's, to come up with other alternatives to help with the revenue. But to your point, it is current buildings, it's not new buildings.
Right now, I'd like to, first, I'll call on Representative Power, but then I would like to appoint Representative Whitney as the moderator pro tem because I need to speak on this at this point.
No, you can't come back up.
Yes, I knew that. Okay. So let's hear Representative Powers, then we'll do this.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I sell real estate, okay? I know what commercial real estate is, and most of the signs you see are for lease properties, and they're called triple net leases. And the buildings are designated A, B, and C, and that's just the basics of some of the stuff that we're talking about here. John Reiner came here when I first came to the RTM. I sat with John. Economic and community development are things that I strongly believe in. My district is over by the sub base. The government pays to have the subs here. I look out for all aspects of the taxpayers. We don't want to balance our taxes on the residential homeowner. We want to look at diversifying our portfolio in town, and that's what we've done. That's one of the reasons I moved from East Lyme to Groton 20 years ago, okay? What John's done and his ability to guide all of us over this period of time has been phenomenal. The majority of towns that I've ever done any kind of development with, they have a planning and zoning commission combined. As Scott has said, this isn't something that's just been thrown together. So my opinion here is not as important as what we're trying to do, which is to grow our community and diversify our tax base. There is an Inlands and Wetlands Commission. So that protects our waterways and our water courses. So when we look at the whole, how do you bring people into the town that we live in and create good business and good jobs here. Everyone's impacted by it. The school systems and the people that live in our town. So my recommendation here is to let it go. I think the people that have made the decision prior to us and us that have sat on this RTM have heard a lot from John. And I think if you have any questions, you should bring your concerns to John, and I'm sure he can explain it to you. Thank you.
All right. Oh, do you want to speak first? Okay, I'll recognize you.
So I'd just like to say briefly that I found this discussion both enlightening and helpful. And I think it went a long way to helping us do our due diligence given our circumstances and time constraints. Thank you.
So I just want to
I'd like to recognize Representative Ebbin.
Thanks, Mr. Moderator. So I just want to have a few thoughts. I want to acknowledge my husband is a builder, and he's on the Planning Commission. And my knowledge of the Planning Commission is that the state already sets a schedule for how they approve things. If they do not meet that schedule, projects are automatically approved. So there already is a timeline that they meet, and if they fail to meet it, there is approval. I think by expanding the number of folks on this commission, it's going to be harder to get a quorum. It's going to increase the workload on this commission. If we ever do get to this point where we have a lot of economic development, which I think is terrific, it's going to be, it actually could slow down the process of approval because they still have to review the permits that come before them. There's a process of reviewing, looking at site plans, and doing all the tasks that two commissions now do. So right now, it's actually probably fine to merge them. But when you get into a situation where you have a lot of development, as we did, say 15 years ago, or a decade or two ago, then it's going to be harder for them to actually fit that schedule that's mandated. The second thing I'd like to, maybe it's the third thing, I'd like to say is just to follow up on what Representative Wells said, which is zoning is not antithetical to development. Zoning protects your property rights. Zoning can enhance your property rights. Zoning actually can help you resell your house. Other things can also help your property rights, and that's like investing in education and environment. But the idea that this ordinance somehow is going to spur development is just a fallacy. It's not. It's just going to merge two commissions and put a heavier workload on the resulting commission. So I am all in favor of development that's well thought out, that's well planned, that the town is conceiving of and moving forward with, but I am not in favor of development for development's sake because I like to have my property retain its value. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative
Whitehouse.
Whitehouse, thank you.
For the question for the clerk, how many votes would a veto require to pass, and how many representatives do we have in the room?
Well, it takes 28 to pass. We're at 34.
Okay. And also, I just want to point out that there is currently not a motion to veto that's been made. So
That is true.
So in order to do so, someone would have to make that motion. I'm just not sure everyone's aware of that.
Yeah, the motion would be a motion to veto.
Correct.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Representative Ebbin.
I'll rise to make a motion then. I'll make a motion that we hold a special meeting next Wednesday.
On the topic?
On this topic that we're discussing right now.
The motion's been seconded.
And I'll speak to it, my motion.
Yes.
I just think that it's almost 10 o'clock. I think we all want to go home. And I didn't think actually that having a meeting next week was a good idea when I first heard it up there. But I do think that there's more that can be said on this. I think there are people that have left at this point. I think we could have perhaps the town council weigh in on this, and we could get some of the points that were raised this evening clarified. So I would really appreciate it if we could meet again and discuss this, because I think at this point we, are just, some of you guys are up to speed on it, but I think the majority of this RTM has just read about this in the minutes.
Is there any further discussion? And we can take a vote. Anyone in favor of holding a special meeting to discuss the topic of this new town ordinance and vetoing it?
Point of order.
Yes.
Could we have a roll call vote on that, please?
You
Yes.
just say it. Okay, all those in favor of holding a special meeting next Wednesday on this ordinance, say yes, no, or abstentions. Representative Adams? No. Bauer? No. Borderline?
Bordelon, yes.
Oh, sorry. Clarence Casper?
Yes.
Chase?
No.
Sini?
No.
Doyle?
No.
Ebbin?
Yes.
Frickman?
No.
Gustafson?
Yes.
Hanscom?
Yes.
Marshall?
No.
Martin?
No.
Massett?
No.
McDermott? Oops, did it again. Menendez?
Yes.
Merritt?
No.
Monahan?
No.
Oliver?
No.
Pasqualini? Oops. Perry?
Yes.
Powers?
No.
Quinn?
No.
Richards?
Yes.
Stanford? Streeter, Irma?
No.
James?
No.
Streeter? Strode?
No.
Wagner?
No.
Wells?
No.
Whitney?
No.
Newsom?
No.
Miller?
No.
Whitehouse?
No.
Rogers?
Yes.
Washington?
No.
Okay. We have 9 in favor, abstentions, there aren't any more of you out there, so 9 in favor and 25 opposed, so you're not having a meeting next Wednesday.
Yes, Representative Massett.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator Pro Tem. A question for the clerk. At this point, would it be proper for me to make a motion to veto the ordinance?
Yes.
Second.
And that's what I did.
Okay.
Discussion? Representative Streeter?
Can we have another roll call vote on that, please?
Unless there's any discussion.
Is there Representative Marshall?
I just want to say thank you for your patience, those that have done this before. I appreciate your patience in letting us ask our questions and keeping you out past 10. So thank you very much.
Is there any further discussion? I'd like to call a roll call vote on vetoing the town ordinance.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator. Just to make sure everybody understands, if they vote in the affirmative, they are voting to not have the committees merge, right?
Voting
They're
for a
voting to
veto.
veto the committees merging. So voting yes means you don't want the committees to merge and you want this to fail, right?
Correct.
That probably just confused people.
We're voting for a veto.
Sorry.
We're voting to veto.
Right, an affirmative vote would be to veto this ordinance. This ordinance is to combine the planning and zoning and have a planning commission, so does everybody understand what they're voting on? Yes. Okay.
Are we still for discussion? Yes. Representative Casper?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I want everyone to understand, though, that vetoing this particular ordinance does not mean you are against merging the commissions. I'd like to make that clarification. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? And we can go for the recall, the roll call vote.
Okay, so signify your vote with a yes, no, or abstention, please. Representative Adams? No. Bauer? No. Bordelon?
Yes.
Oh, boy. Casper?
Yes.
Chase?
No.
Sini?
No.
Doyle?
No.
Ebbin?
Yes.
Frickman?
No.
Gustafson?
Yes.
Hanscom?
Yes.
Douglas? Marshall? God, why am I calling you Douglas? Marshall?
Yes.
Martin?
No.
Massett?
No.
Melendez?
Yes.
Merritt?
Yes.
Monahan?
Abstain.
Oliver?
No.
Pasqualini? Oops, there we go. Perry?
Yes.
Powers?
No.
Quinn?
No.
Richards?
No.
Stanford?
Abstention.
Streeter Irma?
No.
Streeter James?
No.
Strode?
No.
Wagner?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Whitney?
No.
Newsom?
No.
Miller?
No.
Whitehouse?
No.
Rogers?
No.
Washington?
No.
So you have 11 in favor of veto, 21 opposed to veto, and 2 abstentions. The motion fails.
The motion fails.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'm sorry, who made that motion?
Yes, who made the motion?
I made the motion to adjourn.
Monahan
And
Whitehouse.
seconded? Any well, I don't discuss, so
Knock that gavel. We are adjourned. Say we are adjourned.
we are adjourned.